Good morning. We are doing something a little bit different today. I'm very excited about it. We're going to be talking about women's hockey today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you news, stories, excitement, rumors, hot takes, all of the above, and then more about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and also over on YouTube. The YouTube just keeps on growing from strength to strength. So I am so thankful that you are all here and enjoying the content in this very exciting Blue Jackets off season. But like I said at the top of the show, we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. The women's hockey world is going from strength to strength to strength. And so I thought I would bring on one of my very good friends to come and talk a little bit about women's hockey, about advanced stats, about just kind of a little bit of everything, really. So today we're going to be talking to Mike Murphy. He writes for the Ice Garden. He runs Their Hockey Counts and is a big player in the women's hockey sphere. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So I'll just get right into it. So I am super excited about today's episode. Mike is a really good friend of mine on Twitter. He has one of the best Twitter cats, I think. But he's also a very smart hockey person. So we did not bring him on here to talk about his cat as much as I would love to spend, 20 minutes looking at pictures of Franklin and just enjoying that. I thought I will bring Mike on to talk a little bit about women's hockey because the NHL is not the be-all and end-all of the hockey world, and women's hockey is doing some really cool and exciting things at the moment. So I thought I would bring Mike on to have a little bit of a chat about that. So how's it going, Mike?
I'm excited to be on. You and I have been buddies on Twitter for a while, and it's always fun where it's like, oh, there's an opportunity to really have like face to face and really get to connect. So I was like,
yeah, it's always fun to like have a Twitter friendship or a Twitter relationship and then be like, hey, we could actually like connect for work, I guess, instead of just liking, like I said, pictures of your cat or talking about women's hockey, things like that. But yeah, so I figured let's kind of start off with, I mean, Blue Jackets fans, don't hold it against Mike. You are a Rangers fan, correct? So don't don't hold that against him. But I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about kind of how you got into hockey and how you got into women's hockey specifically.
So how I got into hockey was the way I always describe it to people. I'm from New Jersey, but I have 4 older brothers and one younger brother. This is the important part of the story where when you're in a big, ridiculous Irish family and all of your older brothers really in order to prevent being bruised, you say you all think is really cool. So that's how I became a hockey and a Rangers fan specifically. I was always been passionate about writing. I was a big creative writing person most of my life. Like I wrote short stories and poetry. So getting into hockey writing was like, why don't I merge these two things I love, writing and hockey? And that kind of got me started with writing the Rangers at Blue Shirt Banter on SB Nation. That was something that I really valued because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my professional career. And writing about sports seemed like something that would be a dream to try to pursue that. And in 2015, the end came into existence. It's now called the PHF. They had a team in Brooklyn, which to me was not where I live in New Jersey. And they said like, hey, local media, press conference, and I said, "Oh, let me go check what this is about." Because women's hockey, but I only ever saw it during the Olympics and World Championships. So it was just like it was like 1 week every year. I'd be like, "Yeah, this is awesome. This is fun." It's in New Jersey, but no real significant women's hockey college presence outside of that. And I started going to the games, started writing about it, and I kind of just fell in love. There's things that I love about women's hockey that are really different than the men's game, and I recognized that like I could do so. I just kind of put more and more of my time and energy into that space, and where we are now, it takes up more of my time. It does. I just one of those spaces where if you have the opportunity, you can recognize, you can tell stories that connect with people. You can meet players who are like, I just want it to be better for the next generation. And they drive to get to practice, and they all have day jobs, and you're like, how can I not tell this person's story? This is unbelievable. So it's kind of how I got wrapped up into it, is the people you meet and appreciate. It's a game where it's like possession and skill. Before every shot attempt in women's hockey, there's more passes than there are in men's hockey. It's about puck control. It's about chemistry. It's about, you can't rely on just being an absolutely bruising defender. You can't lay in sound defense to take away angles and to play like stick checking is so much more things that I loved about men's hockey that I got a deeper love watching women's hockey. It's like it makes you appreciate men's game too, because you see things that you want to see. It just kind of opened my eyes to what this sport that's taken over my life, just like more layers to it, kind of.
Yeah, definitely. I all feel like I get that story a lot of like, well, I started watching men's hockey and then I started watching women's hockey and realized how good it was. Like I kind of did the opposite. I actually got into women's hockey first. So my first experience with like ice hockey was the Sochi Olympics in 2014 and the gold medal match there, which is still the best game of hockey I've ever watched in my life, like bar none. And so I feel like so many people who are like, "Oh, women's hockey is boring. It's not as good as the men's game." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you're clearly not paying enough attention then, because it's a completely different sport, I think." And man, you said 2015 for the NWHL, and I was like, "There's no way it's been." Obviously, they're going into their 7th year now, but I remember when the NWHL just dropped out of the blue one day. They were like, "Yeah, here's 4 new teams," and I was like, wow, okay, I guess there's something to do here, and here it is.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, when I got into covering the NWHL, I was writing a bit about it at Blue Opportunity to write at a place called FanRag Sports, and I just started showing up. There wasn't a lot of media going to the game. I was like, how are people not paying attention to this? This is history, right? And then I paid more attention to what was going on in the CWHL, and I was like, why didn't I know more? And it's because not enough people outside, like they had one team in the States, and that was Boston. So if you were outside of that Boston market, you weren't really like, where did the Olympians play when they're not at the Olympics? Like, and if they're not in college, where are they? And they were in the CWHL for a time, the NWHL. And it's crazy to think 2015 was that, it feels like this league is still just getting started, but there's like substantial history. And it's fun to see how much has changed since we first started. And I know we're going to talk about it a little later, but we news this off season about salaries. We have players making $80,000, and the first year the big number was 12 for a player. We've more than doubled that now. It's pretty special to see how it's grown, and even with league and another group and all those things and all the obstacles and systemic sexism and all these things stand in the way, it's still found a way to grow. And that's really fun. Women's game just refuses to go away. It's too many people who care, even with all the obstacles in place.
In a minute, I've got more of my conversation with Mike about women's hockey, but first I've got to tell you about Built Bar because they've got a brand new flavor and it's going to be my favorite. I could already tell. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And here's the new flavor. Get ready. Cookie dough chunk puff. Delicious cookie dough covered in chocolate, marshmallowy, delicious, good for you. I can't say enough good things about this. I love the regular cookie dough chunk bar, but I love a built puff even more. They only have 160 calories and they have 15 grams of protein in them. All the joys of eating cookie dough without having to make it. It's win, 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 win. So run to built.com right now to snag a box for you and the family. It's going to be the perfect treat. Or you can just find a really good hiding place, hoard them for yourself. Or if, like me, you live alone, you can just again, hoard them like some kind of built bar gremlin, just like me. So, what's great about built bars is that all of their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently, provides tons of health benefits. So you can eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff. Whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or you just need to grab a quick bite, Built is the perfect protein bar and they taste even better than a candy bar. So ditch the calories, the fat, the sugar, and grab yourself a Built bar. Here's the best bit though. If you go to built.com, you can use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Once again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Yeah, let's. Let's talk about the salary project actually, because this is something that kind of you started just kind of. I remember seeing a couple of tweets about it one day, and I was like, "Oh, this is super cool." So obviously, this is the first time really that there's been any kind of salary transparency in women's hockey. I think so. If you could talk just kind of a little bit about you know why did you decide to start doing this? How, obviously there's been a really big reaction. So just if you could talk a little bit about your experience of kind of documenting this side of women's hockey history,
Yeah,
I
what he
guess.
had. Yeah, the first two seasons of the NWHL, though, it was interesting because the league itself had it had its own version of a cap friendly. It was called like Cap Pro, and it was just on the league site. So I was like, that's very interesting that it wasn't a third party. It wasn't, folks who were sharing when salaries were cut in the second season due to just not enough money being there, and salaries were cut, by the way, without players.
Mm-hmm.
Is those went away. It briefly came back where it was 2019-20, where the league said if players wish to disclose, I think we had 5 players disclose, and then it went away again. But then, when Jeff Merrick, a couple other sources said that, like Michaela Grant-Mantis, who's 2 years removed from being the MVP of the league, one of those players, like, how is this person? She's unbelievable. Making 80,000, which is, I've heard it may not be the most accurate figure, but ballpark. But that was historic. Just hockey at the pro level, we've never seen a women's hockey player make that much before. Like undeniable living wage, wherever you are really in North America. And that was a moment where I said, wow, this space has really changed. And we heard from the PHF that, millions and millions. And then we've heard from Haley Salvian, and we've heard from Merrick that the PWHPA is investing millions and millions on their side too. They're getting investors. They're getting people who are in. And because of that, this offseason that we're in right now is historic. We've never these kind of numbers attached to pro women's contracts. And over the years, I've gotten to know a lot of players. I've talked to them about like when they've negotiated contracts here and there. And the thing that's so few of them, the vast majority don't have an agent. Because why would you have an agent? Give up a percentage of this deal where you barely make anything, right?
Right. If you're making $10,000 a year.
Yeah. Do you want 10,000? Heck no, right?
Yeah.
And why do we only have some of this information? Why is it reported? Like I said, I'm just going to go to the players. I'm going to say, hey, I want to make this. If we know everyone's salary, all these players who negotiate for themselves have a resource. They have knowledge. These GMs, they hold a couple more cards in what I consider to be a really uneven field. GMs held all the cards, and they can tell a women's hockey player on their team, hi, you have a girlfriend here, you have a boyfriend here, or you have a job here that's your day job. I know you're not going to go play for another team, especially if you're playing somewhere in Minnesota, right? So they hold all the cards. And when you're not making a living wage, they hold every card. Do you want to play here? If you want to play, that's the way this works. But now that the money is higher, there's the opportunity for to say, as a matter of fact, I can talk to this other team. Maybe I can make a living wage won't offer me. And that fascinated me, that we had a different market for free agents. And I just started to connect with players. I reached out to every team has 2 reps. And I said, like, what if you want to, there's no pressure. If you disclose your salary, I'll put it here. I'll make it public. I explained everything. And I built momentum with that. People were excited about it. Players were excited about it. And then a veteran of the league said, we have NDAs and confidentiality clauses. I'm not sure we can actually do this. And I said, crap, because I had never seen a contract. And what happened was I made everything private. That was public. I made it so only players had access. And then to people in the PA and behind the scenes making a change happen. So now that if players want to, in the PHF, they can disclose their salaries. It's all done through the league now. So there's no individual reporting. There's not going to be as many scoops as you saw before. It's really wild because how did this start? I wanted to make I made a public Google sheet, and I knew a couple players, and I just started making this thing to help people. And gives you an idea of the kind of impact you can make in this space if you work hard. And players were like, yeah, I'll tell you what I make. And the thing that always kills, I always get emotional when I talk about it, but when a player it won't do them any good right now, but it will help their team, it will help their opponents, it will help the next players who sign, but they are to their deal, right? So they what everyone else has made, but by sharing, they help the next person. And
right, because you can
it's ready to do that.
You can go to the GM and be like, hey, this person had the same amount of points as me last season. Why are they making 20,000 more than me, for example?
Yeah, listen, she was an all-star. I'm an all-star. And you offered me 38,000. What's the deal? Right? Yeah. And so players told me, like, it helped because more often than not, they go into negotiations being like, I'm scared to say what. Because they don't want to say, I want 1,000, and then their GM says, all right, that's unreasonable. And I know that only you can play for. So it's been really rewarding. It's been really interesting. I've had to read a lot more legal language than I know what to do with, because whenever I read big things, my eyes go blurry. But it's been a really rewarding experience to see how things have come around, and a lot of people credit me with it, but at the end of the day, this was the players. This was the players and the PA. They wanted it to happen. They recognized how it could help them, and they made it happen. They made it, and now the game, I think, not just in the PHF, but for everyone is better. It's going to help everyone. A player coming at a says, how much can I actually make playing in the PHF? They can see now, and they make a major life decision based on that. It's for me to keep playing. Should I play here? Should I play in Sweden? Now people deserve to have that information. We're at a stage now where some of it's out there. The way it works now is if they want to disclose, they can. And that's pretty still that we're at that stage.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot about whenever, you hear about Michaela Grant-Mentis making $80,000 this season, and I think about, like, I remember Nuraratu retiring at her peak because she couldn't afford to play, and you hear stories about, players living in their cars and players, like, working Monday to Friday, Friday night going to the airport or getting on a bus, playing games all weekend, going to work on Monday morning, and it just, it feels like we're very much at kind of the precipice of this huge. It feels like it's going to overflow, the dam's going to burst. It feels like we're right on the edge of that, and it's super, super exciting. And I think you said it. It helps other people as well. And you mentioned the PWHPA. I always get that one wrong. Investing more.
Long time to pronounce that without error.
Yeah. Well, because there's there's the Players Association for the PHF, and then there's the PWHPA.
There's the PA of the PHF.
There's a lot of initials.
PWHPA. P's,
yeah,
H's, and A's.
Yeah, too many. But you mentioned, investors and stuff, and I've thought a lot over the years about kind of the rivalry, I guess, quote unquote, between the two leagues, and how everyone's like, can't they all just get along and make one league? And I'm like, okay, but sometimes competition is good, because if they look and they're like, hey, the PHF is getting all of this good publicity by putting more and more money in, well, then we'll put more and more money into our league, and we'll see who can build the tallest tower, I guess. And so I used to be, a very much a I think they should just have one league, just unite and have all the women's hockey in one place. But now I'm like, no, this might actually be a good thing, especially with the PWHPA starting their own like actual league instead of just doing like I understand they did like touring teams. I guess they had like
it's like they did
areas.
Like a barnstorm.
Coming up in a minute, I've got more of my conversation with Mike about women's hockey, about advanced stats, and how you kind of marry those two things together. That's what coming up next on Locked On Blue Jackets.
But I feel the same way in relation to things that the most is neither the PWHPA or the PF of the PA of the PHF. I just did it myself. Them are true unions. Neither group has a CBA, right? My hope is that these two entities compete, not necessarily for dollars, and that will happen. And everyone supports both leagues, support these athletes. I say it all the time. Please support both sides. Elite women's hockey, these athletes deserve it. But what I hope we get out of this is PHF gives these benefits, and then the PWHPA comes along and says, we'll give those benefits and a little more. And then the PHF will say, okay, we'll go even a little more. And then who wins in that scenario? The players win. I hope
everyone.
We see. Yeah. The players win, which means everyone wins. And maybe when that happens, we get true union. We get CBAs. We get players sit down with the league and say, this is how it works. And because we need to get there, we need to have, like, unions are a very important thing, especially in North America and especially in the United States. Like, we need players to be able to cheat collectively. We're going to look out for what's most important. Like, what's most important to these athletes? Getting paid a fair wage, making sure that as high as it can be, health insurance, maternity leave, all these things are really important. And we have some of these things. That's great. But I want them to have every advantage they can, because the women's game has a lot of catching up to do. With the benefits of an NHL player are stark, right? So the good news is a lot of that in place. And entities, them competing results in players getting more. And honestly, I'm never going to sit here and complain that there's more women's hockey to watch and cover, because it's great.
Right. There's
world,
no
as you know, is the Olympics on. When does USA and Canada play? That's when I'm going to watch. And the thing you're watching 1 or 3 games a year. You don't know what you're missing. There's so much more to this. People is like 25 athletes on Team USA, 25 athletes. Do you think there's only 50 great players in the world? Like, come on, what are we talking about? So,
Yeah, and I was one of those people that was like, man, this is so cool. I can't like, why can't I watch it anywhere else? And then a couple of years later, obviously like I knew about the CWHL, but the marketing was just, and there was nowhere to watch it.
Yeah,
And then the NWHL
yeah,
dropped, and I was like, oh, I can watch on like the doorbell cam, and it's bad, but it is there, And it's
yeah,
every year it gets better and better and better. And so I'm really, really excited for the future of women's hockey. And something else that you're kind of a really big part of. I've been really lucky to make a lot of friends that are kind of in the women's hockey analytics circle, which must be an incredibly hard job to kind of get into because the base stats, I think, are not at the same level as the NHL. Like you can't go onto a website and be like, oh, hey, the average time on ice or whatever. Like I know I have
yeah,
covered leagues over here in the UK where the only things we get stats wise are goals, assists, points, and penalty minutes. We don't get time on ice. We
yeah.
don't get line combinations, anything like that, so it's impossible to really kind of track stats. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of your advanced stats work, kind of again, how you got into that and what kind of like what project you might have kind of on the horizon if you can talk about that.
Yeah, so it all really started because I was creating content, stories about the NWHL and the CWHL, and I was like, to my work because I use stats when I covered the Rangers and the NHL and of fantasy hockey writing. And I was used to just being like, yeah, I'll just go to Natural Static or I'll go to Evolving Hockey. I'll get the stats I need. And then with women's hockey, we didn't have that, and I was like, I can't look up primary points. Like I can't look up primary assists. I can't find time on ice. And so I said to myself, okay, there's only so many games every week. At the time, there was only, and they played 4 games a week during the week. I just started counting. I went to the box scores and counted stats and started tracking stuff. I said, well, I might as well share it with media and fans. And I say this to everyone because it's true. The highest I got with math is math for the liberal arts at a community college. I'm not good at math. What I am good at is working pretty hard. And so I worked hard. Being in the women's hockey analytics, you have to be MacGyver. You have to look at a bunch of junk and say, make something useful for this. So it's a lot of duct tape. It's a lot of elbow grease. It's a lot of, we don't have this, but what we can make is this, which is blatantly less good. But the good news is every time someone does something, yeah, it does the job for now, right? Every time someone comes up with a tool or a metric, or they release a project like we had at Wacky Hack, and we've seen it, the Big Data Cup and stuff. People do groundbreaking work in the women's hockey space. Mikhail is so great at, and I have it work with like NWHPA. How do we translate points and the impact of players across leagues? It's huge, right? So even though we have really limited data, we do valuable things. And that is that, like, it's all just a frontier. Every little thing you do in this space makes sense. It helps us understand the game better. It helps us evaluate players. A lot of people are learning that they can get impact with women's hockey data. And that's really fun. Right now, what I'm doing, honestly, I'm just and like trying to finish projects from the forever ago, and just getting stuff updated on their hockey counts. I got a little wrapped up with the whole salary transparency project. It took a lot more. And then I was like, I might do work with this, like data-driven work with salaries. Like, and then I got to the point where I was like, what's more important to me here is like, do I want to make a story out of this, or do I want to give this game a little bit? And I chose the latter. And but it's fun most of the time when I will boost people who are a lot smarter than me, which is most people. People are seeing good work that's being done, but the real story of how I got involved with this game is I looked around, I didn't see a lot of people doing it, and I said, well, I can do this stuff. This stuff isn't that hard. I just at who's an assist first. That's the primary assist. And then I make a note of, did that happen in even strength? Did it happen on the power play? Did it happen shorthanded? And then after a while, you build base. And all of a sudden, you can identify this player is getting all these even strength. This player is getting all these primary assists at even strength. And players who make good plays at even strength. So even though you don't have that time on ice data, you can weave together, right, and you start to be able to tell stories. And that to me is the most rewarding part of it, is being like, we only have this much. What can we do with it? Do a lot. You just have to be creative. You just have to acknowledge its faults and flaws and limitations, right? You're able to say, yeah, it's a small sample size, or yeah, we don't have time on ice. Look at who's scoring power play goals on the Buttes. Look at who has the primary assists. We can identify who's helping to make things happen. It's not too tricky. It really just takes a little more time than it should, because we don't have the great resource on the inside of the game.
Right. I know just enough about advanced stats to make me dangerous. So like whenever I follow along with advanced stats or anything like that, like I can kind of follow where it's going, but it is just kind of, it's so impressive to me that like you could kind of basically take all of these random numbers and be like, look, here's a story, here's a narrative, here's what we could do. And like I definitely think there is work there that you could do, advanced stats and marry it with the salary stuff. The data is always going to be there. So it's not necessarily, I don't think, choosing one or the other. It's just choosing one or the other right now,
Yeah, choosing one or another right for. And also, you do run into this thing where I wondered about how much work I could do about, like, if you want to, if you know a player's salary, you know another player's salary, you can do the math that we see all the time in the NHL. How much is a team paying for a goal? The problem I have with that, with applying that to women's hockey right now, is like, to me, it just feels kind of crappy when we do that for people who aren't making a living wage. I feel like we need to approach those conversations very mindfully. We're careful about, like, so why is this player not? How can we compare player X, who maybe only gets to practice with their team once a week because she's a full-time nurse and plays hockey when she can on the weekends, versus a player who makes twice as much and hockey? It's not fair to compare them one-to-one, right? There's all this story. So when we get, I say this a lot, when we get to the point where like everyone's making $50K a year, and to do if they want to, although who the heck knows with what living wage, with inflation and how the world's working. When we get to the point where everyone's comfortably making, the players who make the least make enough to comfortably, I feel like we can have those conversations without feeling conflicted. And I look forward to that, and not just for the data, but also for the fact that when we get to that, I feel like the ecosystem of the women's game will be strong. And I'd say this all the time to people: we don't know what the best women's hockey in the world, because there's only like 2 or 3 or 4 dozen players who get to. We don't know how good Michaela Grant-Mentis is if she's never been able to do it before. This is the first year we get to see that.
Right.
And that's unbelievable when you're like, she's that good already. What do you mean she's going to get better? She will. She'll get. That's the stage we're getting to, is these players who are outside the national team will get to that. And that's better for the national team players. It's better for the PWHPA, PHF, women's hockey. And the thing I always tell people, when women's hockey succeeds, hockey succeeds, right? It's better for the NHL. It's better for the average fan who doesn't watch women's hockey. Hockey as a sport gets better when women's hockey is stronger.
Yeah, for sure. So if people want to learn maybe a little bit more about women's hockey, a little bit more about kind of the work that you're doing with salaries or with advanced stats or anything, where can people find you online, and where can they find your work?
You can find women's hockey work at theicegarden.com. We're part of the SB Nation. I work with brilliant, generous, wonderful people there. You can find the data I put on a website called Their Hockey Counts, which is just data I manually mine and lose a lot of sleep over creating, but I put it out there so people can use it. So please use it. But yeah, that's where you can find my work. Take a moment to say there's a lot of really important people in this space, and they all deserve support. So if you find me, please find other people who are on my timeline. So content, it matters, especially in the space it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm so lucky to know so many wonderful, wonderful like content creators for women's hockey, and I have just been looking for an excuse to talk about it on this podcast because I would like a PHF team in Columbus, please. I think that would be really neat.
Yes, I think that would be brilliant too. Thank you so much for your support. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the time to come and talk about women's hockey. And that's kind of all I've got for you today. Tomorrow is Saturday, so there will not be an episode. Monday, I will continue the season reviews. We're going to be talking about Jack Roslovic on Monday. As of next week, we are going to be officially dropping down to 3 episodes a week. So Monday, Friday, Wednesday, hopefully. Not in that order because that's not how the days of the week go. It's fine. I'm doing my best out here, but we will be having less episodes, more infrequent episodes. So that's what's going to happen. It's only for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, maybe, until the season starts back up. So I will be enjoying the time, a little bit of extra time off. Hopefully, you will not be too hard up for content, but I will still be here 3 times a week. Maybe more if exciting Blue Jackets news happens. And I, again, like I said in a recent episode, I feel like Jarmo Kekalainen is not quite done this off season. I feel like there is more chaos yet to come. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for this for Locked On Blue Jackets on Monday. Thank you once again for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets, free and available on all podcast platforms, free and available on YouTube. You're never going to have to get behind a paywall for a Locked On product. And that's our promise to you. So check it out. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find this podcast at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And until Monday, make sure you stay locked on.